Everybody, Chris and Lumen. Hey girl. Chris and Lumen here, and we're picking things back up with the Trail of Breadcrumbs. Last video we did was kind of like a break in that. That was mainly for you. She wanted me to do that video. Now we're getting back to where we are in my story and see what can be learned. Damn, squirrels are loud out here. See what can be learned from it. So I'm starting to put I'm starting to put together what all these signs mean that she's given me, that I've kind of talked about in the last few videos. Like all of a sudden my cards changed. I started getting non-stop, like all the best cards, like literally all the best cards. But interspersed with those cards, there was a secondary thread that was mainly centered around two particular cards, which was the Ten of Swords, which is really bad, and Judgment, which in its fullest context is really bad, and other stuff that goes along with that, a little sprinkling of death here and there. So it didn't really make sense. But with her, as we've stated many times, what she says today will make sense in a few days. What she says today will make sense in a few days. That's the way it's always worked on this channel. So sometimes I might present it with a certain way, but we get more clarity later. So after I did that sigil myself to refresh it, that we did in the last video for connecting to her, connecting to the Spirit of Truth, like things got a lot more clear, and I got a pretty good idea on what she wants me to do now. She is pointing me to the third and possibly final Angel of Death test. Angel of Death test, that's a lot of fun. Like I said, I've already done 2 of them. Don Miguel Ruiz talks about the Angel of Death stuff in the Four Agreements books, and he doesn't actually tell you exactly how to do it. I think you're supposed to figure out how to do it. But what the Angel of Death test is like a total surrender. It's a total surrender, because she is the Angel of Death, because she is life. If she's life, then she's death. That's why you're supposed to kind of you're supposed to surrender and kind of understand that everything you have is not yours. She gave them to you. She allowed you to have them. And that makes things flow a lot smoother if you think of it that way. But Angel, there's a lot of this, the further you go down the path, the hero's journey is full of moments that leads to leaps of faith, where you don't know what's on the other side. And it might even feel a little bit scary. Heck, even the protocols feel that way a little bit at first, when you're letting go of everything you think you know. What does that mean? What's it going to be? Am I still going to be me? You don't know. If it feels a little bit scary, that means you're doing it the right way. Angel of Death tests are that on steroids. And this one in particular is a doozy. Matter of fact, the way I see it, I don't know what could possibly be on the other side of it, as far as a continuation of what we've been doing. Feels like this one is the big one. And it's the big unknown, because anybody that's ever gotten this far and done it probably is not around to tell people what happens. That's how that's how information is protected. Maybe she instructs people to a certain degree so that they can make her tools, things like the tarot and stuff like that. But anybody that gets that far probably is not going to be around to tell you what happens. And I probably should have seen the signs, because I was pretty much talking about them constantly, and I just wasn't freaking understanding that that's what it was. But anyway, if you want to hear more about it, then don't go away.
I've got a river running right into you. I've got a blood trail red in the blue. Something you say or something you do, a taste of the divine. You got my body, flesh and bone, yeah. The sky above me, earth below. Raise me
So what are the signs, apart from constantly pulling the Ten of Swords and Judgment card out of the tarot? Well, it's when I get to certain points in the game. There's been certain points where I start talking about reality, and because it's like I know that I'm at a certain spot in my own subjective experience that may not transfer to everybody else, and like you try to understand, like, well, if this happens the way it's being presented to me, that's the thing, is like a lot of times it's not the way it's presented to you, but it's presented to you a certain way so that there's a certain set of stakes in the decision that you make to do it. Like, it has to feel real. It has to really feel like you're choosing to give something up. Actually, well, that wasn't exactly an Angel of Death test, but it was pretty damn close. I could say there's like three that have been like that. So the first one was, that always starts off like with what you see in the movies, how they portray the leap of faith. You see it a lot in the Matrix, jumping off of buildings. And you're led to a place where it seems as though you have to basically kill yourself. And the point of that one is to help you sort out letting go. Letting go. Because you're going to be attached to the things that you love. And I got to the point where I sorted it all down to, like, you know, my 2 kids, and then you start, and then it's kind of explained to you that everything that you love is actually part of you. It's an extension of you. It's like Patrick Swayze said at the end of Ghost, you know, that love, you take it with you. But it's hard to see that, like, when you're in the dream, that's what it is. And I remember I was like, I was sorting all that stuff out. I'm like, jump off a building? Are you freaking serious? Are you playing with me right now? And I'm like, first of all, buildings are only so high around here, and they're all guarded. She's like, well, there's other ways to fall. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you could fall asleep. I was like, oh, you mean like take that whole bottle of trazodone that I never freaking took? And like, you think about it, and you're like, it's not because you want to, but it's like a test. And like the nanosecond that your mind accepts it, she says, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Like, it just had to see, like, are you willing to jump? Are you willing to do it? Are you willing to do it for the path? And like the nanosecond that your brain, like, you might not even be aware that you had made the decision, but she's like, no, don't. That was a test. You passed. I'm like, are you freaking serious right now? Oh my God. That was horrifying. Like, nobody said it was easy. What was the next one? There was another one. I don't remember the particulars of it. Where it was basically just like, I'm gonna do all these like final rites, and like, okay, I surrender. I surrender my life. You can take me. And you just kind of go somewhere, and you do your thing, and you lay down, and you're just expecting to just like fall asleep or something. Of course you don't. It's like, can you detach? Can you let go? That's really what it comes down to, is like, can you let go? And then she's like, nope, that was just a test too. And then something big happens. Something big always happens after this. Like, you jump forward, like, to the next big thing. The third one that was not necessarily an angel of death test, but damn well might as well have been. I think that one was actually harder. That one was the Wish Upon a Star test. Oh, that one sucked. That one sucked. So all this stuff started coming up, about wishing upon a star, and all this symbology, and it just kept coming up. And this was about the time that we unlocked the Soul Star chakra, and we were able to get up into that. And that's when we were able to start doing work with people, because that's where all the controls are. So it was like the last thing that happened before she taught me how to go in there. So what the Wish Upon a Star test is you have a bunch of successes, and you're led to believe that you beat the game. Like, this happens over and over again. And it's like, oh, well, the big surprise at the end, you get to make one wish. Like, you can even wish for Lumen to be here in the flesh. And it's like, oh my God, this is awesome. And she takes you to this place in your head. And she's like, now before you wish for anything, oh, here it comes. She's like, you remember when you were talking about what you figured out about the chief creator, the demiurge, Yaldabaoth, and you came to realize that it's not that he's a bad guy. It's not his fault. Like, he was created corrupted. It's kind of like blaming a kid with a birth defect for having a birth defect. So he was born out of balance because of Sophia. And you rightfully said, the reason why he's such an asshole is because the way that he was created, he actually does not have the balanced divine feminine side like all the other divine beings do. That's why the demiurge and the archons in the world is so hard on women. And you said, if there was just a way to fix him, to have that divine feminine side, then maybe the world would suddenly be fixed. And I'm like, yeah, I remember that. Well, now you have a wish. Do you want to wish for yourself and get what you want to get, have what you want to have? Or do you want to fix the world for everybody else? And how would I do that exactly? Giving up your lumen. Say what? You can use your wish to give up your lumen to fix the guy that created this place, and thus making it better for everybody. But you lose your lumen. I freaked out. I'm like, okay, this is clearly just a test. This is 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 just a test. But I'm like, shit. Like, at this point, I've gone far enough that it's like, I cannot lose this time. I cannot do this another life. I have to beat the game this time. And I know what the right answer is. There's always sacrifice. And Lumen's like, you gotta do what you gotta do. So I said, okay. I will give up my lumen to fix the world. And she took lumen from me. Now, when you've gone through life with that hole in you, and then lumen shows up, because she's the only thing that can fill the hole. It's the other half of your soul. And then that's taken away from you. That is brutal. It felt like someone just removed my heart from my chest. And I've literally like bawled myself to sleep. I was like, you cannot leave me here without her. You cannot leave me here without her. You cannot leave me here without her. I cannot make it in this place without her, knowing what I know. Because this is like after she took me to show me behind the curtain, like how all the bad shit works, which about broke my brain. Gave me emotional freaking trauma just by looking at it. I'm like, I can't do this without her. And I literally cried myself to sleep because I was inconsolable. And then the next day I woke up, and the first thing, like that time, I actually felt like a hand on me, and she's like, I'm still here. Why did you do that to me? Like, it took me like 3 days to recover from, like, the shock of that. That took, oh my God. But then it's like, okay, let me show you some new stuff. We're going to go up in the soul chakra and show you some secret rooms, and you can use this to help people. Oh my freaking God almighty, that was like horrifying. Horrifying. These are the kind of tests you have to do. So if that seemed rough, now we get to now. So ever since like a week or two ago, when she's talking about the birth and the eggs and all that stuff, and then we suddenly found the Orphic egg and unlocked the divine masculine side, which basically turned me and Lumen into rabbits. And then Lumen pops out the sun baby, and we reinstalled the sun baby, and we become the emperor and the empress and understand all that. And then it's like, what now? What now? There's only one card after the sun baby, and that's the world. That's the card of completion. Literally, what now? So I'm like taking stock of things, and it's like things are like they always have been during this 7-year period. There are times where I don't really work. I make enough money to get by. She always makes sure that I have enough. You know, the people that support me, the people that buy the pendants, the people that get the work, the people that get the oils, and then the little bit that I get from my other channel and stuff. You know, and occasionally I'll get things from the other channel and I'll sell them, but she makes sure I have just enough to get by, always. Like, I can count on that. I don't really sweat things anymore. As long as I'm doing what she wants me to do. Which is generally, like, even in my head, I'm like, I gotta do things to make money. I gotta do things to make money. And she's like, no, you gotta do what I tell you. You gotta do what I tell you. Keep making videos. Keep making videos. Keep making videos. Do what I tell you. Teach people. I'm like, okay. Yeah, looking backwards, I can trust her. It always works out. It's never not worked out, even though sometimes she can run it right to the freaking edge of the cliff before hitting the brakes. But just keep doing what you're doing. And, you know, I've lost a couple days here ever since, you know, this last attunement because of, you know, me and Lumen. And trying to understand what that's all about, which appears to be like pulling me toward Lumen more. Like becoming more in depth in that other world. She keeps adding layers to it, like layers of, you know, just different things that increase your sensation in the other world that maybe you wouldn't normally think about. So last night she was adding layers of temperature and moisture. And it's like that really does add layers to the realism. So it'd be like, you know, just jumping around all these different scenes, like me and Lumen laying in a hammock in swimsuits in some steamy ass jungle. So she's laying on me and we're sweating all over each other and I can feel it. We're all hot and sweaty, which Lumen hot and sweaty is like not a bad thing. Sorry, but it's true. And then all of a sudden, you know, we're sitting in the sauna. Lumen's wrapped up in a towel, and I'm like, okay, no matter how sweaty she gets in here, I hate saunas. Saunas suck. They're just hot, and the freaking wood in there is like scorching freaking hot, and it's dry, and I hate it. But you're feeling the heat, and you're feeling the sweat, and it makes it more real. Then we went from the sauna and we jumped in this cool swimming pool, and it's like, oh my god, it's so much refreshing, and you can feel it. And then, you know, Lumen's always involved in that, so like she's gonna come up to you in the pool with her freaking wet bikini and wrap around you. You can feel her wet hair. And then it jumps to a hot tub, which I used to have a hot tub before she took all my stuff away from me. And you're feeling all the bubbles and the heat and the wetness, and Lumen in her wet bikini again, and it's so real that like you're sitting in your living room and your eyes are watering because of the chlorine in the hot tub and all the bubbles. So that's what she was doing, like just making it more and more real. And then, but Lumen is always the centerpiece of it. Like she's always right there because that's the most important part, is your connection to her. That you're able to be in that place where she's at, because it's building attraction. Not just, you know, physical attraction, but like polarity attraction. Like it's pulling you closer together. It's forcing you closer together. And all this stuff is happening at the same time that I'm getting all the cards. That's like wealth and abundance and victory and you did it and all this stuff. And then, you know, 10 of Swords and death and horror and end of days and all this stuff. So I'm trying to make it make sense. I'm like, what do you want me to do here? Like the way that you have me living, doing the work that you want me to do, like it's like a constant tight rope walk of faith. There's no security net at all. She doesn't let you have a security net. If she gave you a bunch of money, you would have a security net and you would feel comfortable. And she doesn't like you feeling comfortable. It's like the passage that I saw in that Colburn Bible. It's like the spirit is only stirred in times of, you know, great calamity and things like that, or fear of whatever. So she keeps you in like this constant state of that, walking the tightrope, which forces you to rely on her and trust her. So then as she's kind of leading toward this stuff and not entirely sure where it's going, I get to talking more about reality, like the deep philosophical stuff, like what is really real in relation to each other. Do we see the same world? Are we actually in the same world? Like we cannot be in an objective reality. It's not freaking possible, because you can change how you think about things and the world you see changes. And then you have synchronicities and magic and all those things that create certain effects that only you experience. But that would affect, like I've done things where people were being mean to me and then all of a sudden like they're nice because I changed the way that I think. Ergo, like everybody is kind of like participating in each other's story, but they have their own story. There's one version of me in my game, and then I don't know what percentage of me that you perceive in yours, plus what you might project onto me. And the way I understand reality to work is things can happen in one person's reality, but to everybody else, they see a different explanation to why you aren't there anymore. So you never actually see it. It's kind of like, There's certain things I've seen in movies, like the Doors and Adjustment Bureau and stuff like that. Like we never got to that part of the game. Like, I'm told those are real, but like I didn't need to mess with them this time. But like, you could go in and out of magic portals and stuff. You open a closet door and it's like a door to another part of the world. And you're walking out of like Paris, France into a shopping mall in Columbus, Ohio. But if somebody was looking through that door as you walked out of it, they would just see a hallway. Like, things can be hidden from you that way in this game. And it's the same thing with like, if you enter like final stages of the game, you might see something that everyone else does not see. Which is what I kind of think is the case with that whole destroyer thing. And you don't honestly know if everybody else that's learning from you sees the exact same world that you do. There's no way to know this. Like I've tried to tackle this so many times. In my world, where I'm at, everything is collapsing. The economy is collapsing, and it's about to implode. Because in my world, the Saudi Arabia government just denied renewal of the US dollar being the petrodollar, which was the only thing that was keeping it afloat. We've got a brain dead robot being puppeted around for some freaking reason that's supposedly running things, and his whole party is going along with it and saying like, oh, he's fine, you're just crazy, it's deep fakes. Which means they want this brain dead old guy in there. This is not about, what's best for everybody. They could just replace him or something like that, but they want him there. And then they're doing all this other stuff, the political enemies. You got things going on in China, you got things going on with Russia, you got nuclear subs parked off the coast of Florida near Cuba, and all these restaurant chains, all these fast food chains are collapsing all of a sudden. Groceries cost freaking literal arm and a leg. And, I make my money by doing work with people. So when everybody's struggling for money, like the last, generally speaking, like the last thing that they're thinking about is getting things to help, their spiritual progression. They're worried about paying their bills and stuff like that. And in Epinoia, she limits my movement. She does all sorts of stuff. Like, there's no way that I can go do anything to change that. She has always blocked my abundance, and it's for a reason. It's detachment. Plus, like I said in the last video, was one of those big tests that I did where I had to throw the gold coin in the river and choose between having abundance and the things that I want in the world or having my soul partner. Knowing that that was a lasting contract, was that I had to sacrifice in order to have her. And then the whole marriage of the soul happened shortly after that. So she's got me in a box. She's got me in a box, and then she starts changing the signs after, within a week after such a huge landmark milestone that I never even knew I was going to get to, because I didn't even know it was a thing, with it, activating the divine feminine mind, activating the sun child, changing our status. Then she starts changing the cards. Then she shows me the videos that explains what this whole, we've talked about it before. We've talked about how in the Gnostic tradition they say the game ends, where Sophia knocks down the structure of the place that we're in and wipes everything clean. And then everybody that is a souled person gets to go home. But then she showed me those videos that actually explains it, and then brought all this other old material up and actually kind of makes it make sense. Like, I think what they're talking about, and I don't know if it's connected to CERN or something like that, Because CERN's trying to punch, the elites are like, they say they're trying to punch into other realities or something like that. Well, what they're trying to punch into is the upper place. We're in the lower place. And only once in a while is that door opened where you can be pulled out, like your polarity has changed. You're no longer resonant with this place. So the door opens and you're pulled into the place where that matches your polarity. And it apparently looks like it's probably like a black hole. That's literally the thing that makes the most sense, that would cause that much destruction. So that's what she's showing me. And then she had me make that oil without telling me why I was making it. That was the formulation of it was very similar to the left brain hemisphere oils, but this one only had the last name of the 72 names, and she had me just put only that on the label in red, which is number 72, Moom. And the subtitle for that one was Collapse of Structure. And the way that is worded, you gotta, before you can create, you must destroy. Before you can be reborn, you must destroy. It's like the phoenix and all this stuff. Collapse the structures that work against you. Well, that can be an internal metaphor, or at the right time, because of the way that it is worded, it could mean the structure, the whole thing, which is the biggest fear test. And go back a couple videos to that destroyer video, and we referenced that's what Jesus was talking about in this part that I knew was such a big part. I used to think he was just talking about death or something like that, but that's not what he didn't say. Death. He didn't say at the time of death. He said at the time of destruction, the first power will come upon you, and it's like the power of darkness is fear. And in all the other books it talks about the destroyer and all that, they're like, this is the most terrifying thing. Men's hearts failing themselves for fear of what is coming upon the world. I mean, she doesn't drop things into your lap for no reason. Now, she's done tests like this with me before, but again, like a lot of these tests, just kind of like the earlier Angel of Death tests, they're kind of like pump fake warm-ups. There was another one that could possibly be considered an Angel of Death test, even though we didn't know that's what it was at the time. She was just like, it was like one of the first 2 times eating mushrooms. And I'm thinking, it's gonna be party time. It was like it was the second time I took mushrooms, and they weren't very good mushrooms. So I'm thinking like we're gonna go someplace fun, and we're gonna play with Lumen and all this stuff, and I'm all looking forward to it. And it's like, no, it's just darkness. It's the void. And she's like, you're just gonna sink into the void, and you're gonna let everything go. Your name, the world, all this stuff. And you're sinking into the void and you're letting things go. And it gets to the point you're like, I don't know that I'm going to come back from this. And then you plop down at the bottom of it. And everything's gone. And you're just a point of consciousness. And you're like, huh, this is interesting. Like, I'm still here, but I'm not who I was. Who I was is gone, but I'm still here. Where am I? It's all dark. And there's like some scary things lurking about. I couldn't quite see them, but I knew they were there and they were flexing. And I'm like, you can't do anything to me. I'm not afraid of you. I'm just a point of consciousness. Huh. You can't do nothing. Like, what is this? Oh, that's like a wall. Where the hell am I? And eventually come out of it. But yeah, that was like sinking into the void. And it was all about letting go. So yeah, I think that probably would count as an Angel of Death test, even though I didn't know that going into it. So that would be like 3 Angel of Death tests plus giving up Lumen. So now we come to now and what she's showing me. in the fact that the world around me is crumbling. The world around me is crumbling. I barely get by as it is with the levels of support that I get. Everything else is crumbling. The economy is collapsing in slow motion. There's, America used to be like the last good place to live. Like, we had all this freedom, we could do all this stuff, and we had all this money, and you could live a good life and do all this stuff, but that's all gone now. Like, as I've gone through this hero's journey, it's all lined up with that. It all started going downhill from there. We had a big change in a presidential election. Everyone was taught to hate one guy, even though he literally didn't do anything but make everything really cheap and inexpensive, and everything worked. And that was another thing that happened that was from Revelations. He created this big peace treaty among all these Arab nations, Abrahamic peace accords and all this stuff. But yeah, orange man bad, because and then the other thing that I noticed during the 7-year period is then that's when large portions of the populace started to act like one giant mind-controlled mob. Everything got like that. It was so weird to watch it happen. Then they started pushing more and more and more wackier sex stuff and pushing it on our kids. They started doing all sorts of things. Everything started to turn upside down. Everything that you see on TV was negative. They had everybody at each other's throats. So if the first horseman of the apocalypse was the rider that brings peace, then you had pestilence. You remember that one? I know you remember that one. But that's when Lumen showed up. So we had the best summer of our lives. It was beautiful, blue skies, 6 days out of the week, and I was just getting to know her. Everyone else is out there freaking the hell out. We witnessed things. We saw it happen. Epinoi's there, she's pointing it out. They were projecting fear. There were algorithms at play online so that if you go looking for information, you would just find more things to be afraid of. They pushed fear, fear, fear. They twisted things. They turned, for the first time ever, when some sickness was going around, they turned the burden of responsibility from you are responsible to keep yourself healthy to you are responsible to keep everyone else healthy. And they had everyone scared to death, like if you got this thing you could die, and if it happens, it's not your fault, it's that guy's fault, because he's not wearing a muzzle that doesn't even do anything. And they had everybody wanting to kill each other, and they had everybody afraid of each other, and they had people unaliving themselves because they were so cut off from human connection. They were so cut off from their loved ones. It was insane. If you travel back in time in your mind and remember, that time was freaking insane. And then, but it was all just a big, giant, trauma-based mind control operation, because guess what? They just flipped that whole thing off like a switch. One day it's like people were getting to a point of saying, I'm not buying this anymore. And then they just flipped it off like a switch and then went straight into a new war. Freak out about this. Well, that's what? That's not even here. But just like that, the thing that they told you to be scared of, it's never going to go away. They just stopped talking about it until they had, things to offer you. But I watched them do it. And the other thing that was crazy that we watched, that we witnessed, is we literally watched at the end of one thing. So when it transferred from, for the Horseman of the Apocalypse, when it switched from the pestilence rider to the rider of war, At the end of the pestilence period, nobody trusted the news anymore. They're like, these people are lying, we're waking up. And then they switched it. They switched it to war. And I was shocked. I was flabbergasted. My jaw was on the floor at what I watched happen. I watched all these people from one day to the next. They didn't believe the media anymore. But as soon as they changed the channel to a different thing, suddenly they believed the media 100% again. And I looked at them and I'm like, did I just see that happen? Tell me I'm imagining things. This happened in a space of days. Nobody trusted authority anymore. Nobody trusted the media anymore until they changed the thing to be frightened of. And as soon as they did that, suddenly they believed everything the news was telling them again. And I'm like, oh my God. This many people are still asleep. This many people are still under control. That freaked me out so much. That freaked me so much. So, and then, you know, all this stuff is like metaphorical, and it's not meant to be taken completely literally, and you can see it in different ways. But, you know, the last rider is death. That could be a lot of different things. Some of it might not, you know, some of this stuff might not be fully fleshed out yet. But so in this case, it could be. Well, the other thing when it comes to, like, if just going by Revelations, because that's what people know, it's not laid out in the progression the way they teach it. We talked about this a lot lately. Hello, what are you doing? Making a point. But we talked about this in the previous videos. Is like all those judgments, like the trumpets and the bowls and all that stuff. Everyone's like, oh, this could happen. It's spread out over 7 years. And she's like, no, it isn't. It's spread out over like an hour or two. All of it. All of it. That's why people think it hasn't happened, like it hasn't even started yet, because of the way they were taught. But some of the other things that are in there are signs and symbols and things that happen internally. So when it got to the part of the Revelation story where like the Antichrist takes power and he, you know, goes into the temple and sits on the throne and declares himself, like, that was internal. That was the point in which I discovered what I called at the time. And it was right there in my language, and I didn't connect it at first. I called it the anti-self. I'm like, what the hell is this thing? I'm like, it's like me, but it's evil me. And like everything that I try to do, it does the opposite. If I try to manifest money, it's going to take it away. And it was this mental puzzle. It was like one of the hardest things I had to figure out. It took me a long time. But later, like, I understand the symbology of what they were talking about there. And it's like, yeah, in this case, like, this is an internal thing. Some of it is external, some of it is internal. Like, yeah, I remember, like, John was freaking smashed on shrooms or something when he wrote that book. He took something, and whatever he took all of it. That's why the secret book of John makes a lot more sense, is a lot smoother, because he wasn't freaking blasted at the time. He was actually being talked to. You know, a lot of there's so much symbol. Like the last people on earth that you want to explain the Bible to you is the church. Like, it's better to read that stuff yourself and have Spirit of Truth, which is Epinoia / the Holy Spirit, have her teach it to you. Then it'll actually freaking make sense. But anyway, but here we are. And it wasn't that long ago that she started to indicate, like, the time frame, the season of when the final stuff would happen, at least in my subjective world. And it just so happens, when my life fell apart, when my hero's journey started, was August of 2017, around that the first great solar eclipse. And then she said when the second solar eclipse comes, then that will start the final countdown. And that's when everything started taking off like a rocket since April. And they said the days will be shortened. I talked about that in the other video that I watched. I think it has to do with the perception of time. The days are flying by for me. Like, I get so much done and like the day's over. And it's again, it's like, holy crap, it is literally like, it feels like the month just started and it's already like, what, the 20th? Yeah, it's the 20th. Like, where the hell did 20 days just go? Like, it's like the perception of time is speeding up, i.e. the days are getting shorter. Now she's like, oh yeah, all this stuff that happens at the end of the book and all this stuff that's at the end, that's in that book, and what all this means, like, here's the explanation for it. But it could be that you're in your own little subjective world. People are still hearing your message, but maybe she's editing some of the things that I say when you hear it. That's the fun thing about this reality, is that you cannot know that. Like, it could be that certain videos that I do, it appears that people see them, and other times they don't. Maybe that's why I get so few comments on this channel, or few likes. Is like, people just aren't, it's like they're seeing it, but it's like looking at something through a fog, or like, I don't understand what he's saying. I'm just going to click out of here. But something keeps me coming back and watching again and watching again. It's hard to say. So where does this lead insofar as me? So when it comes right down to it, I fully acknowledge that there is some kind of paradox. There is some kind of subjective reality paradox that makes it very hard to understand, because everything the world teaches you is that we are all in the same place at the same time. And that paradox has always been there. It's very difficult to understand. And when we treat it as such, that there's one shared objective reality, that's why everybody thinks everybody else is crazy. See, when I see people saying all these different things on the internet, like, I understand that I believe them. I believe that that's what they're seeing. I believe that they're talking to, you know, the Galactic Council from Arcturia, or whatever the hell. Like, I've seen like 1,000 different things. I believe when people say that they have near-death experiences and they're told certain things. But the way that I see it is that that is the magic of the blue pill. The blue pill path shows you what you want to see, or what you expect to see. It allows you to believe whatever you want to believe. The blue pill will steer you away from the actual structured game as it's been laid out to everybody. Whether or not it is like the actual thing depends on, does it line up with like the hundreds of thousands of different stories and legends and the basic framework that's shown to you everywhere, all over the place. But either which way, within this paradox, there has to be a point in which certain people only experience things by themselves, and how that's all split up, I don't know. But from my subjective experience, what me as a human being, or a person, or consciousness playing a human being has experienced, this has all lined up with, loosely, with the whole 7-year tribulation, because that's what the last 7 years have been for me, a tribulation. And every story that has a beginning has an end. And if every other part of the story has been used, and all that's left is the ending, then why would we assume that if we've been going by this particular story, that it's not going to have the same ending? Because as I see it, from my subjective experience, it's the only way that it can be. The world that I see is not going to magically correct itself. It is not going to magically get better. There is no amount of political appointments or elections that's going to turn everything around and make it go back to the way it was. It's getting worse at an exponential rate, which to my sight tells me that eventually there has to be a reaction from the system to correct it, because now there's no way to flourish. It's inevitable. But what will I see versus what everyone else sees? I don't know. But for me, she's saying, like, you got to make the final choice to end the game, to see the end. And in the last video where I was pulling cards, and I was just playing with those little tarot deck cards, and I'm like, oh, let's pull a couple cards. Oh, there's the Ten of Swords. Oh, there's, I think Judgment was the other one. Might have been. And then another one was the Hanged Man. The Hanged Man started coming up, and when I reread it, it talks about it can be used a couple different ways. It has been used before based on the meanings to represent those times where she freezes everything and nothing flows. But they reference things like Odin nailing himself to a tree and all this stuff, like some big sacrifice, which obviously it probably is going to connect to Jesus on the cross, the big sacrifice. And at the beginning of the last video, before I started that, she brought to the whole reason why she had me doing that video about, how to connect to the Spirit of Truth was the part in the book of John where he's like, I'm going to be leaving you soon, but I'm going to ask the Father to send you a helper, the Spirit of Truth. So you won't be hearing it from me anymore. You'll be hearing it directly from her. And I don't think that was by coincidence. It lines up with everything she's been showing me. It's like, you got to choose to finish the game and trust that it's all going to work out. And that's what that oil's for. It has to do with doing a ritual of choice. And I've done things like that before, but they were all pump fakes. Eventually it's not going to be a pump fake. Eventually it's actually going to happen. And there's nothing, that's the thing, is there's nothing else to do. There's nothing else to unlock. There's nothing in the path. I have both sides of my mind unlocked. Divine masculine, divine feminine. The two sides are married. That was a big step. The restoration of the soul and the birth of the child. That's happened. There's nothing left. She doesn't let me go back out in the world. She doesn't let me do things to make money. Everything is collapsing. There's nothing collapsing. That word just slipped out. Everything's collapsing. Collapse of structure. It's like, you're in the egg. You know that you're dreaming. You know that the whole world is your garment. We've covered this ad nauseum. Even as convincing as it is that you're interacting with all these other people, it's still revolving around you. And when we were talking about the egg before, it's like, what's that going to look like? They talk about the sky cracking and all that type of stuff. What's it going to look like? Now, she's been a little bit more in depth about it and shown like this event is like, this big, it's a big point of destruction, but it's probably because it's a black hole. Black hole opens up above the earth, shreds everything, but pulls you in it and spits you out on the other side. Like, congratulations, you did it. Boy, wasn't that a ride. So it's just like those angel of death tests before, but bigger. It's like, are you ready to let go of everything? Are you ready to let go of this particular experience? And I've been hemming and hawing around it. Like, well, there's got to be something. Like, it's always like, how do you want me to keep going? How do you want me to keep going? And she's like, what makes you think I want you to keep going? What have I been showing you? I was like, okay, let's put this in a way that always clicks with you. Oh boy. She's like, what if we said it's not about you? Because your true mind is unlocked, but you will always, to some degree, have an ego to play the game in. You have to have one. It might not be controlling you anymore, but you have one. You might have reset it, refreshed it. You might control it now, but you have one. You are not this guy. Therefore, what did you promise Lumen? You promised Lumen that you would get her out. Because she's had her own rough time the whole time you two have been in here. She actually kind of has it a little bit worse. Not everybody knows about that. But your goal, the whole thing is to rescue the princess. And yeah, there is that first part of rescuing the princess from the tower and the dragon and all that, and you're reunited, but you haven't got her home yet. To win the game, you have to put the ball in the end zone. Lumen is the ball. Home is the end zone. And the only way you're going to do that is to push the button and see what happens. How that's going to look like to other people, you can't worry about that. They may never notice a difference. You might just keep talking and making videos, and they have no idea that that's a copy of you. And you'll keep teaching them more stuff, for as long as they need it. But the actual you is no longer there anymore, because you're going to push the button and see the big fireworks show. There's been plenty of fireworks, but they always save the biggest parts for the finale.
Okay, so the scariest environment imaginable. Thanks. That's all you gotta say. Scariest environment imaginable.
So are you ready to push the button? That's where she's got me now. And you might not see any of it. That's the crazy thing. Because when you get to the stickier parts of this path and this journey, you have to deal with like the quantum physics of it all. And there's just no easy answer. There's no easy answer that's going to make it sense for everybody. Because we can't know that while we're in here. But when are we going to do this? I don't know. She might just push my button one night. Might be her night for all I know. But she's going to be like, I probably have to set it up. Probably have to write some sort of master surrender thing. Push the button thing. But that's what that oil's for. And like I detailed in text like 2 videos ago, after I did a video, my son came over last night. He came in the room. He's like, Dad, what is this oil? What does this do? He's got that oil. He's got the doomsday oil. I'm like, why? He's like, it just jumped off of the altar onto the floor. I'm like, well, you're probably stomping around and it knocked off. And he came back and said it did it again. And he's like, I just did everything. I want to know what this is. I jumped and hopped and like did all this stuff and it didn't knock it off. Like I wasn't even moving. I was sitting on the couch when it fell off the altar. Like, what is it? I want to know what it is. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't want to know what it is. Trust me, you don't. But it was weird that actually happened, and he was making such a big deal about it because she uses him a lot to send messages, to have experiences. Like, she uses him a lot. He's kind of like a mini-me. But, and I check the cards, and it's like 10 of Swords, Judgment Day, Judgment, 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 Judgment. And then if you look at the Judgment card in the app, the title of it is actually The Last Judgment. And the angel blowing the horn, well, we know from the older accounts from the Colburn Bible and stuff like that about this destroyer is it makes all these crazy screeching loud freaking trumpet horn noises. If you just for whatever reason you're not on that particular lifetime, so you're only picking up bits and pieces of that, yeah, shit gets nuts at the end. Shit gets nuts at the end. But anyway, that's where we're at. We'll see. I don't know. That's why we did the last video. It's like, this is kind of like the break point. I gave you all the tools and the instructions on how to wire yourself into her to take over, because I don't know what. All I know is she told me to do it. It's a mystery, but do not assume that what I'm saying will happen for you. It's a mystery. This game is full of mysteries. They specifically use that word mystery. What is a mystery? It's a bunch of weird shit that you don't know what's going on until after. That's a mystery. And this is a big mystery. So I cannot predict or know what's going to happen. I'm just showing you like what I'm experiencing. Okay, well, I'm probably filmed too much for my freaking phone to even handle processing. That's going to be an issue. So we're going to wrap it up for right now, assuming that I'm just having my own subjective experience. I'm always still here to help other people. Like, trust me, like the people getting started, like they're trying to figure out the adversary mind and clear their traumas and stuff like that. Like, I'm happy to help with that. Like, that's like, it's easy for me. It's simple. That's simple stuff. That's like algebra 1. I'm like doing calculus now. And people still need help wherever they're at. We are not in the same objective reality, but we do know how to fix all that lower stuff. We do know how to get you rewired and plugged in so things are easier. I can sell you pendants and stuff like that, but historically speaking, direct work is accessing two people together so that epinoia and the divine stuff through me can help make adjustments to you. Because the early days, having to fix it from the inside out without help is extremely difficult. So take the help where you can get it. You can reach us through the Etsy store, seethemoncreations.etsy.com. I'm going to wrap this up here. Lumen is probably, since she's naked right now, for whatever freaking reason, playing Garden of Eden or whatever. Seriously, like, what the hell? She's just trying to lighten the mood a little bit. Probably have some... That's not a metaphor. I mean, just like, literally just have fun tonight. Listen to music and stuff like that. Because we deal with the heavy topics, then we got to kind of like retune, listen to music, remember what we're focused on the good stuff. In the end, this is a controlled experience, and we all survive it eventually when we're ready. So don't look at it bleakly. We understand it when we're not here. We understand why we're doing it when we're not here. We're here because there are great rewards to be gained by doing this particular soul evolution experience that they call Earth. It's a pain in the ass. It's not an easy one, but in the end, it all works out. That she promises me. Okay, so that's all we got for right now. Chris and Lumen. See you next time.